Welcome everyone. Today we'll explore the cognitive neuroscience of self-regulation failure. It is useful knowledge that really relevant to our everyday lives. Let me explain in the simple way so we can understand this better. First of all, what is exactly self-regulation? Well, this is basically our ability to control our thoughts, emotion, and behavior to achieve our goal. It is what helps us resist to desire, stick to our plan, and generally behave in the ways that are good for us in the long run. We might not notice this, but we use self-regulation all the time, like when we choose a salad instead of burger, study for an exam instead of watching Netflix, or even we hold our tongue when we get angry. So now self-regulation failure is when this all system breaks down. It is when we give in to desire, procrastinate, or act on impulse even though we know better. We have all been there, right? Maybe you have blown your diet with a late night snack overdue, or put off an important assignment until the last minute. These are all examples of self-regulation failure. So what is really cool is that the neuroscientists have studied what happened in our brain during moment of failure. They are trying to understand why we sometimes lose control and how we might be able to get better at self-regulation. So you want to know why this is happening? So one of the key players in this whole process is prefrontal cortex. This is the part of our brain right behind our forehead. It's involved in all sort of high-level thinking, planning, and decision making. But when it comes to the self-regulation, the prefrontal cortex is super important. It helps us keep our long-term goal in mind and resist immediate desires. But the prefrontal cortex is not always in charge. There are other parts of our brain like limbic system that are more focused on immediate reward and emotion. The limbic system includes a structure like amygdala, which is involved in processing emotion, and the nucleus accumbens, which is part of the brain reward system. So you can think of regulation as a kind of tug of war between these different brain systems. The prefrontal cortex is trying to keep us on track with our goal, while the limbic system is pulling us towards immediate gratification. When self-regulation fails, it often because the limbic system has won out over the prefrontal cortex. Now you might be wondering, why does this happen? Why can't our prefrontal cortex always keep us in line? Well, there are a few reasons, and this is where the neuroscience gets really interesting. One of the big issues is stress. When we are stressed out, our prefrontal cortex does not work as well. It's like the CEO of our brain goes on coffee break just when we need them most. And meanwhile, the limbic system gets more active, and that is why we might be more likely to snap at someone or reach for the comfort food when we are stressed. And another factor is what scientists call ego depletion. This is the idea that self-control is like a muscles that can get tired. If you have been exerting a lot of self-control all the day, you might be more likely to give in to desire later on. It's like your prefrontal cortex has run out of energy. Interestingly, the neuroimaging studies have shown that even people are in the state of ego depletion, there is less activity in the prefrontal cortex and more activity in the reward related area of the brain. Next is emotion play a big role in the self-regulation failure too. When we are feeling a strong emotion, especially negative ones like sadness or anger, it can be harder to regulate our behavior. This is because the emotional processing can kind of hijack our cognitive resources, make it harder to the prefrontal cortex to do its job. There is another evidence that some people might be more prone to self-regulation failure than others. For example, a study has found that people with certain pattern of brain activity or connectivity might be more likely to struggle with the self-control. This doesn't mean they are doomed to failure, but it might mean they need to work a bit harder at the self-regulation. One really interesting area of research is looking at how substance abuse affects self-regulation. Drug and alcohol can have a major impact on the brain system involved in the self-regulation, and they can make the reward system hypersensitivity while also impairing the function of prefrontal cortex. This can create a double whammy that makes it really hard for the people with addiction to regulate their behavior. But the cool thing about the understanding the neuroscience of self-regulation failure is that it can help us develop better strategy for improving self-control. For example, knowing that the stress can impair self-regulation, we can focus on a stress reduction technique as a way to boost our self-control. There is also some exciting research being done on way to directly strengthen the neuronal circuit involved in self-regulation. This includes things like cognitive training exercise and even non-invasive brain stimulation techniques. The idea is that by repeatedly engaging these circuits, we might be able to make them stronger and more efficient, kind of like how we can build muscle through the exercise. Another promising area is mindfulness meditation. So a study has shown that the regular mindfulness practice can actually change the structure and function of the brain in ways that support better self-regulation. It seems to strengthen the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, helping them work together more effectively. So understanding the neuroscience of the self-regulation failure can also help us be more compassionate towards ourselves and others. It's easy to beat ourselves up when we fail at the self-control, but knowing that there are complex brain processes involved can help us take a more balanced view. It's not just about willpower or character. There is a whole lot of biology involved too. This research also has important implications for how we approach problems like addiction, obesity, and other issues that involve self-regulation. Instead of just telling people to try harder, we can develop interventions that target the specific neuronal mechanism involved in self-control. For example, in treating addiction, we might focus not just on reducing drug use, but also on strengthening the prefrontal cortex and improving its communication with other parts of the brain. This could involve cognitive training exercise, stress reduction techniques, and strategy for managing emotions. In the case of obesity, understanding the neuroscience of self-regulation failure can help explain why it's so hard for the many people to stick to a diet. It's not just about the willpower, it's a complex interaction between our brain's reward system, stress response, and cognitive control mechanism. So this knowledge can help us develop more effective weight loss strategy that take these neural processes into account. One really fascinating area of research is looking at how our social environment affects self-regulation. It turned out that our ability to control our behavior is not just about what's happening inside our own head, it's also influenced by people around us. For example, a study has shown that being socially excluded can lead to decrease in self-control. This might be because social rejection activates some of the same brain area involved in physical pain, which can disrupt our ability to regulate our behavior. On flip side, positive social interaction can boost our self-regulation abilities. Having a strong social support can help buffer against stress is a major factor in self-regulation failure. Another really cool area of research is looking at how sleep affects self-regulation. It turned out that getting enough good night quality sleep is crucial for maintaining our ability to control our behavior. When we are sleep deprived, activity in the prefrontal cortex decreases, while activity in amygdala increases. And this can make us more reactive to negative stimuli and less able to control our impulses. The sleep connection is particularly relevant in the today world where many of us are chronically sleep deprived. It suggests that one of the best things we can do for our self-regulation ability is simply to prioritize getting enough sleep. Now let's talk a bit about development. The ability to self-regulate doesn't just appear overnight. It develops over time, particularly during childhood and adolescence. This is because the prefrontal cortex is one of the last areas of the brain to fully mature, not reaching full development until our mid-20s. This developmental trajectory helps explain why teenagers often struggle with self-regulation. Their limbic system, which drives reward-seeking behavior, mature earlier than their prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for control. And this mismatch can lead to increased risk-taking and impulsivity during the teenage years. So the understanding this developmental process is crucial for parents, educators, and anyone working with young people. It highlights the importance of supportive environments and opportunities for young people to practice self-regulation skills as their brains are developing. One of the most exciting aspects of this field is how it's starting to bridge the gap between the neuroscience and real-world application. Another exciting area is the intersection of self-regulation and decision-making. So researchers are exploring how our ability to regulate our behavior influences the choice we make and how we can use this knowledge to help people make better decisions in areas like finance, health, and education. So in conclusion, the cognitive neuroscience of self-regulation failure is a fascinating and rapidly evolving field. It's helping us understand why we sometimes struggle to control our behavior and pointing the way towards new strategy for improving self-control. By shedding light on the complex brain process involved in self-regulation, this research is not only advancing our scientific understanding but also has the potential to make a real difference in people's lives. Whether it's helping someone stick to diet or quit smoking or simply the more productive, the insight from this field have wide-ranging applications. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video.